Hello, hello, hello. It is Cory Bretz here from Heirloom Films and Storybooks. I wanted to give you a backroom tour of a life story family history film. This one is called The Coleman Family Legacy, and this was made for the Coleman family about 2013. And what was interesting is that Bob, the husband of the film, he passed away about 18 months later after we had finished filming this, and fortunately he got to see it and showed it to his grandkids, and he was very excited. What you're seeing here is the timeline of his film, and we're working in a video editing package here. You can see that the average family history film is literally thousands of little bits and bobs of pieces. This is like the final film was an hour and 44 minutes when it was finished, and there's all sorts of different sections going all the way through here, and each of these little dots here represents either a piece of video or it's a photo or some kind of a title. And of course down in the lower tracks here we've got some narration and some music as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a little bit of the section where Bob introduces his father. And Bob was adamant that the reason he was sitting down with me and his wife for several afternoons to do this filming and this going through all these photos was because he wanted to honor his grandchildren and his great-grandchildren with the story of their family. He really admired his father, and so he was quite excited to do this. So let me just show you what we got. I'm just going to scrub across this timeline just to give you a sense of what's in this. So we're going to look at a period of time from where are we here? About 1 minute into the film to over here where I've marked it, which is about right here, about seven, almost 8 minutes in. So we're looking at about a 7-minute period of this film here. I'm just going to scrub across and just give you an aerial view of what you're going to see. So those are all images that we pulled out of his photo collection, plus some, like this one for example, some context imagery that I found online that's actually legal to be used. But I'm fascinated. Like this is his father's actual passport, dated 1926 October from Danzig, when he came across the ocean to Canada from Poland, and so let's just roll some of this and let you watch it and see what we're talking about. There's Bob and his wife, and let me just fire this thing up. I'm going to make it full screen, and I'm going to push the button and enjoy. The story of the Coleman family starts in Europe in places like Mogilev, Russia, Poland, and Belarus. In the 1920s, Shapsy Goldsman and Ida Gottlieb lived in the town of Pinsk, which at the time was controlled by Poland. Pinsk is situated at the confluence of the Pina and Pripyat River next to extensive forest lands. From the 16th century to the 20th, the leading Jewish citizens of Pinsk were large-scale merchants who imported finished goods, tools, colonial goods, spices, and fruit from the West, and exported skins and furs and wax, tallow, salt, and grain, and especially lumber and forest products to the West. Jewish storekeepers and stand owners were a large majority in the marketplace, and Jewish peddlers made the rounds of surrounding villages.
My father is Samuel Goldsman, Golcman. Well, he grew up in Poland. His name was actually, when he was living in Pinsk, his name was Shepsel, and from that came, when he changed his name, that came to Samuel. He was my hero. When he was in Poland, he was very strong, and for those years he was actually quite tall. He was 5'9", which was unusual. People that lived there were short, by and large, and he was tall, and he was very, very strong. And if there was any problem in Pinsk, you know, somebody was bothering them, he'd beat the devil out of them. You see, he wouldn't hesitate. And as a matter of fact, one time he beat somebody so badly, he was afraid that they were going to arrest him and kill him, and he left for 4 or 5 weeks, or give or take. He slept in trees way out of the country, so they couldn't find him until he figured, well, maybe it's safe that I go back now. He decided in 1919 to begin with. There was a pogrom in Pinsk.
Anti-Semitism was rampant in post-World War I Pinsk. With war brewing between Poland and the Soviet Union, the Jews were targeted as enemy Bolsheviks. On April 5, 1919, 35 Jewish leaders in Pinsk were summarily executed by the Polish army.
And he decided that was one reason that he didn't want to live in Pinsk. He was living actually with my in-law, which was Victor. And Victor and my mother. That's where he was living, you see. And that wasn't a very good place for him to be because, you know, he had no future there. And he decided that he just had to get out. And just to tell you just how bad it was living there, he came home one day, and my mother was in the bedroom crying. And she was crying, and her daughter was with her, and so I went in and I asked, "Why are you crying?" And she said, because my husband beat me, and she had all kinds of marks over her face. He beat her up. So what my dad did is he waited until his father-in-law came into the house, and he took him by the neck and he looked him right in the eye and he says, "If you ever touch her again," he says, "I'll kill you." And I really says, "I mean it, I'll kill you." That was the end of that, you see. He never touched her again. My mother's name was Ida Priva Gottlieb. My mother and my dad was living in Pinsk. And Pinsk was, you know, where they were living was this very small area actually in Pinsk. And they fell in love, and they met when my mother was 17. My mother was a very beautiful woman, and they got married. And I was born when she was 18. When my mother came over, she had never cooked or anything in her life. She didn't have to. It was all done for her. She didn't know anything about cooking at all. So but finally, after she was in Vancouver a short while, they were having Passover, and so they had knedlach, you know, and so they had knedlach, which so she and chicken soup. So anyway, my dad is eating the knedlach, and he puts his spoon into the knedel, and part of it went into his eye. It was very, very, very hard. It went into his eye. So I remember that too. Small thing, you know. And
was he injured?
No, but he just didn't want her to make any chicken soup anymore, don't you? Well, my dad came over in 1926, and it took him a year and a half of working very hard to get enough money to bring over my mother. And it really was something, because to begin with, you know, when he first came to Vancouver, he was met by a Reverend Bostinsky, who was, I don't know, he was a wonderful, wonderful man, and he would meet anybody that would come to Vancouver and try and help him. And he got my dad a job for a pawn shop on Hastings Street. And my dad worked from that pawn shop about 3 days, and he got a hold of Reverend Postinsky again, and he says, I can't handle being in a pawn shop. I just find too much horrendous things that happen there in the pawn shop, and get me any other job here I can't do it. He says, I just can't do it. It just isn't me at all. And so he got him a job in an upholstery shop on the 7th and Granville, and that's where he learned the trade for upholstery. Anyway, Sid was born in 1934, and I'm very happy to have him as a brother. And there was a big difference in our...
Well, we could go on because it's a great story that Bob tells. I just love the old imagery of the passports and the ship manifests and all that kind of stuff. So that's a little bit in behind the scenes of a family history film. And if you've got a whole whack of photos in your closet and you're wondering what to do with them, or if you know some of the stories of your parents and your grandparents, you may be the only one at this point. So this is kind of what you could do with it. Thanks for watching.